Once upon a time, in the lively, ever-bustling city of Accra, there lived a jeweler named Balani. She wasn't just any jeweler. She was the jeweler, the name on every celebrity's lips. Her exquisite shop was the go-to for wedding rings, attracting Ghana's rich, famous, and aspirational. On Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, Balani was a powerhouse, boasting millions of followers. Booking a consultation with her wasn't simple. A hefty, non-refundable consultation fee of 20,000 cedis was required. No complaints, no negotiations. Balani's designs were in a league of their own, creative masterpieces with breathtaking aesthetics. Every bride-to-be dreamed of slipping a Balani original on her finger. Each ring she crafted went viral, and the exposure alone was enough to elevate the profiles of her clients. One day, a rising lifestyle influencer named Kemi reached out to Balani's office. She wanted to book her for her upcoming wedding. Kemi was loved by the public, stylish, smart, and sophisticated. Her engagement had just made the headlines, and fans buzzed in anticipation of the grand wedding. To Kemi, only the best would do, and that meant a Balani ring. On consultation day, Kemi and her fiancé Tunde arrived at Balani's showroom, arms intertwined, cameras rolling to capture every luxurious moment. They were treated to caviar, champagne, and first-class service. Balani unveiled an array of jaw-dropping rings, masterpieces in platinum, gold, and studded gemstones. Kemi chose a gold wedding band, crowned with an exquisite blue sapphire, her birthstone. Tunde selected a sleek band, subtly embellished with tiny diamonds. Of course, Kemi documented everything, the glitz, the rings, the vibe, and posted across Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Netizens drooled. The rings, the luxury, the price tags, everything screamed opulence. But back at home, not everyone shared the excitement. "My daughter," her stepmother warned gravely, "wedding rings symbolize your union. You don't buy them from just anyone just because they are famous. You and your fiancé must pray and fast before choosing your rings." Kemi brushed off the warning with a laugh. She knew how deeply spiritual her stepmother could be. Trying to reassure her, she said, "Mom, even the top 1% of the 1% buy their rings from Balani, and their marriages are perfectly fine. This woman knows what she's doing. Kemi, how would you know if their marriages are fine or not? Don't believe everything you see on social media," her mom said, trembling with worry. Though uneasy, her stepmother said nothing further. She didn't want to cast a shadow over her stepdaughter's big day, but deep down, the sense of foreboding wouldn't leave her. The wedding arrived, and it was flawless. The hall shimmered like a movie scene. Celebrities walked the red carpet. Influencers uploaded countless photos on social media. Every major wedding blog and magazine splashed Kemi's wedding across their covers. Kemi, radiant in her designer gown, glowed beside Tunde. Their rings were the talk of the ceremony, sparkling under the lights. Her stepmother smiled, silently lifting her hands in prayer, pleading that her fears were misplaced. Months passed, and Kemi's marriage blossomed beautifully. They became couple goals. Anytime Kemi posted a photo of Tunde cooking barefoot in the kitchen or snapshots of their spontaneous getaways around the world, the comment section would light up with admiration. "Oh, how cute. He loves her so much. I tap into this blissful marriage union. God, when? Am I your stepchild?" But then came the first pregnancy, and the heartbreak began. In 2 years, Kemi suffered 12 miscarriages and 2 stillbirths. Despite the sorrow, Tunde remained supportive. Still, the ordeal drained them emotionally and physically. Kemi hid the truth from her stepmother, fearing she'd be dragged into endless prayer meetings. She told herself that she was young, only 25, and that her hectic lifestyle was likely to blame. Besides, doctors assured her and Tunde that there were no medical issues. They just needed to slow down. Determined to heal, They took a wellness trip to Singapore. Kemi even stepped back from social media to focus on herself. 4 months after their return, Kemi discovered she was pregnant again, and this time the pregnancy thrived. Kemi and Tunde's joy knew no bounds. At their 12-week scan, the doctor smiled and turned the screen toward them. "You're having triplets," he announced. Tunde whooped in disbelief. "I told you I was a sharpshooter. Look at their big heads, just like mine." He laughed, eyes glistening with pride. It felt like divine compensation, as though heaven had finally taken note of their grief and decided it was time for joy. Kemi made it past the dreaded 6-week mark, past the fragile first trimester, all the way to 8 months. The nursery was nearly done, baby clothes folded, names quietly whispered between kisses and belly rubs. Then, one fateful morning, Kemi went alone for her routine prenatal checkup. Tunde had an interview that day, not just any interview but the interview. Apenthene magazine had chosen him for a personality feature. A story in that glamorous business magazine could make careers and open unimaginable doors. They were elated. Everything finally seemed to be working in their favor. "Go," Kemi urged, placing a kiss on his cheek. "I'll be fine. Pregnancy is not a disease." They both smiled. Neither of them knew. It was the last normal smile they would share for a long, long time. But at the hospital, things took a dark turn. Routine tests showed her blood levels were dangerously low. Doctors grew visibly concerned. "Are you feeling weak or dizzy?" one asked. Kemi shook her head, confused. The medical team whispered urgently among themselves. Finally, the doctor sat beside her, his voice heavy with worry. "You're developing signs of preeclampsia. We need to admit you immediately for observation, for your safety and that of your babies." Kemi's world tilted. She called Tunde, who promised to rush over after his interview. But 2 whole days passed, and Tunde did not show up. Her calls went unanswered, and his office kept saying he was in a meeting. Worried and alone, Kemi finally begged to leave the hospital against medical advice. She needed to know what was happening. It was not like Tunde to act this way. Battling Accra's rush hour traffic, she made her way home, only to have her heart shattered. There, on the matrimonial bed, was Tunde, his arms wrapped around her, none other than Mina, of all the people he could choose to cheat with. His face was buried in Mina's neck. They didn't even notice her standing there. As Kemi watched, a warm liquid trickled down her legs. Her water had broken. A searing pain stabbed through her abdomen, making her scream. Only then did Tunde and Mina realize they had been caught. They rushed toward her, but it was too late. Kemi collapsed in pain and went unconscious. At the hospital, Kemi woke to devastating news. Her babies were gone, and right there, beside her hospital bed, sat Mina, her head resting gently on Tunde's shoulder. And Tunde, comforting her. He wasn't looking at Kemi. He wasn't holding her hand. He wasn't crying for their babies. He was rubbing Mina's back. A sharp pain stabbed her chest. Kemi's throat was hoarse, but her voice cut through the silence. "Can you two show me some respect?" They didn't untangle themselves as Mina merely watched her with a false look of sympathy. Tunde's words cut deeper than any knife. "I'm tired of this marriage. I want to be with Mina now. I need a woman who can give me children." Kemi stared at him, her heart shattering further with each syllable. He showed no guilt, no remorse, nothing. And Mina had always wanted what Kemi had. Always. Since they were children, a dark cloud of envy had followed her, fed by years of cruel comparisons from her own mother. "Can't you see your cousin Kemi? Very smart, very sharp. Look at her, and look at you, coconut head. How did I even give birth to someone like you?" Those words echoed in her ears for years. When they were teenagers, it got worse. "Your head like D-ball. No wonder no good man wants you." That constant comparison, that unrelenting ridicule, adding something inside Mina. What started as quiet jealousy soon festered into full-blown obsession. She stopped trying to be herself and instead began trying to be Kemi. She copied her outfits, her hairstyles, even her laugh. She mirrored the way Kemi talked, walked and posed for photos. She launched a social media channel just like Kemi's, mimicking her every post. But it didn't take off. Her views were poor, her engagement worse. Desperate for relevance, she begged Kemi to refer her followers. And Kemi, thinking nothing of it, did. After all, she was an influencer, and who better to support than family? Kemi had kept her close, introducing her to friends, connecting her with brands, even featuring her in campaigns. She saw Mina as a little sister, trying to find her way, not realizing she was nurturing a shadow who wanted more than just her style. Mina wanted her life. It was no surprise when Kemi's stepmother raised a red flag. That girl and her mother, I don't trust them. Be careful, Kemi. Stop letting her run in and out of your matrimonial home. But Kemi had brushed it off. She thought her stepmother was simply being paranoid, maybe even spiteful. She had laughed it away, unaware that behind Mina's sweet smile was a heart full of resentment and a plan already in motion. How wrong she had been. Kemi stared at them, at him, as Tunde stood arm in arm with Mina like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like her entire world hadn't just shattered. The betrayal hit her like a slap, sharp and disorienting. She blinked rapidly, trying to process the sight before her. Tunde and Mina. Her mind reeled. Tunde had always avoided Mina like a plague. Anytime she visited, he'd quietly excuse himself, saying he had work to do or errands to run. He barely acknowledged her. He didn't even like her, or so Kemi had thought. So when had this happened? How had this happened? How could they possibly have found time or reason to fall into her arms? Tunde cleared his throat, his expression unreadable, cold, unrecognizable. Kemi, he began. His words struck harder than a physical blow. Don't bother coming back to the house. The silence that followed was deafening. Kemi stared at him stunned. Did she hear him correctly? She must have, because he simply turned and walked out of the hospital room, with Mina by his side without looking back. Kemi lay there, numb, in her hospital bed. Her babies and her marriage had been ripped away in an instant without warning. Trembling, she reached for her phone and dialed a number she realized she should have called a long time ago. As the phone rang, she could barely breathe. "Mama, please, I need you," she whispered when her stepmother picked up. Her stepmother, Mama Kemi, hearing how broken Kemi sounded, wasted no time. "Where are you?" she asked quickly. A few hours later, Mama arrived at the hospital, her face stricken with worry. The moment she saw Kemi's frail figure lying there, something deep inside her broke. She rushed to her side, gathering her into her arms like a child. Kemi wept like she hadn't wept before, releasing all the bottled up pain, betrayal, and heartbreak she had tried so hard to hide. "My baby, why didn't you tell me?" Mama Kemi cried, rocking her gently. Kemi told her everything, about the miscarriages, about the stillbirths, about Tunde, about Mina and how she lost the triplets. Mama Kemi listened quietly, her eyes closed, murmuring prayers under her breath. Days later, Kemi was discharged. She returned home with Mama, who cared for her like a baby. Mama cooked for her, bathed her, prayed with her, and comforted her through the endless dark nights. Kemi clung to her, letting herself heal, but deep inside, a terrible feeling gnawed at her. It didn't feel like ordinary suffering. It felt darker, like something spiritual. One night, she confided her fears to Mama. "I am not making excuses for Tunde, but I don't think all this was just bad luck," she whispered. Mama nodded. "We must pray, Kemi. We must seek answers from God." For the first time in a long while, Kemi agreed. But things took a terrible turn after that. Tunde, The man Kemi once called her husband, her best friend, her everything, grew even colder toward her. It was as though whatever love or memory they had shared had been scrubbed clean from his heart. Every plea Kemi made fell on deaf ears. He had totally moved on with his life. And worse, Mina had completely replaced her. Overwhelmed by all that was happening, Kemi had stopped eating. She barely slept. She grieved the loss of her family. One dawn, Mama found her curled up on the couch, her body trembling with silent sobs. She just sat beside her and began to pray, quietly, her voice firm but filled with compassion. And then she said something that made Kemi sit upright. "Kemi," Mama said, her voice low. "Do you remember the feeling I had about your wedding ring? And about that jeweler?" "Mama, I already told you there was nothing wrong with the ring," she said weakly. Mama just sighed. If you say so, my child." But later that day, Kemi couldn't shake off Mama's words. Her heart pounded wildly as she grabbed her car keys and drove to Balani's glamorous jewelry shop. But as she neared it, a horrifying sight made her slam the brakes. A thick, dark mist hovered at the entrance, invisible to the laughing couples entering the store. Kemi's hands trembled. She stared at her ring. It seemed to wink at her wickedly. It hit her. She began to feel that Mama had probably been right about Balani the jeweler. Could it be that she was evil? Kemi's stomach turned as she questioned herself. For the first time in 3 years, she tried to pull the ring off her finger, but it wouldn't budge. Terrified, she turned the car around and sped home. When she got home, she burst through the door screaming, "Mama, where are you? I should have listened. My enemies have succeeded." Between sobs, she told Mama everything she had seen. Mama listened, her face pale. Without wasting time, she took Kemi to her pastor. The pastor prayed, and then his face grew serious. "These rings are cursed," he said solemnly. "They were made by an evil woman to destroy families, to turn love into hatred and happiness into sorrow." Kemi gasped. Tears flooded her eyes. It all made sense now. The miscarriages, the hatred from Tunde, the betrayal and the loss of the triplets. The pastor continued, "Each time you wore it, your blessings were drained and transferred to her. Your love, your marriage, your future was all stolen by her." He anointed Kemi's finger with oil, prayed fervently, and broke every covenant attached to the ring. Finally, the ring slipped off. "But you must destroy both rings," he warned. "If even one remains, the curse will continue to destroy your lives." He gave Kemi a small bottle of anointing oil and detailed what she must do. Kemi knew she needed Tunde's ring too. He had taken it off when he started dating Mina. She couldn't tell him the truth. He wouldn't believe her. So, she made a daring plan. She waited until Tunde and Mina left for work, then used her spare key to sneak into the house. Her heart raced wildly as she went straight to Tunde's drawer. There it was, his wedding ring still in its box. Kemi grabbed it and fled the house. Back at Mama's house, she prepared to destroy them both. But just as she was about to start, the house began to shake and a violent storm began to brew outside. Mama started praying. "Don't be afraid. Finish it," she cried out. Outside, the storm raged. Kemi clutched the cursed rings tightly, her hands trembling. She knew the shaking of the house and the raging storm was Balani's doing, and that could only mean that the curse was about to be broken. Ignoring her fear, Kemi ran outside into the storm. The wind almost knocked her over as she reached the fire pit behind the house. With shaking hands, she poured the anointing oil over both rings. The moment the oil touched them, thick black smoke poured out as if something evil was trapped inside. Balani suddenly appeared physically, her eyes glowing red, her voice no longer human. "Stop!" she screamed. "You foolish girl! You think you can break our covenant?" Kemi wanted to run, but she stood firm, praying loudly in tongues. She lit a match and threw it onto the rings. Whoosh! The cursed rings caught fire. They glowed an eerie red as they burned. Balani let out a blood-curdling scream. The ground trembled. Balani staggered forward, dark smoke pouring out of her eyes, mouth, and ears. Her skin cracked like old leather as something invisible ripped out of her. Mama and Kemi stood holding hands and kept praying, their voices steady and strong. Balani clawed at her chest, screamed once more, and then, poof! She exploded into ashes and she was gone. Just like that, the storm stopped. The sun broke through the clouds. Silence fell around them like a heavy blanket. Kemi and Mama stood frozen, staring at the pile of ashes where Balani once stood. A cold wind blew past them, scattering the ashes into the sky. Kemi knew it was over. The curse was finally broken and she was free. On the other side of town, Tunde sat relaxing on the couch with Mina, watching music videos on YouTube. Suddenly, when the curse broke, a shock ran through him. His eyes snapped open in confusion and horror. He stared at Mina as though seeing her for the first time. Without thinking, he jerked his arm off her shoulder as if it had burnt him. "Where is my wife?" he asked, his voice filled with panic. Mina turned to him, stunned. "What kind of useless question is that?" she snapped. Just moments ago, she had been so sure that Tunde loved her deeply, but now it was as if someone had flipped a switch inside him. "Tunde, what is the meaning of this after all that we have been through?" she barked, her voice shrill with panic. Tunde turned to look at her as though seeing her for the first time. His eyes, once clouded, now bore a clarity that shook Mina to her core. "Through what?" he asked quietly, his voice deadly calm. "You were never supposed to be part of my life. You were never supposed to be in my home. You were never supposed to." His voice cracked with the weight of realization. Mina stepped back, her face paling. No, Tunde. You love me. You said you loved me," she cried, grabbing at his shirt desperately. Tunde peeled her hands off him as though they were something filthy. Mina's chest heaved as she saw the hatred blooming in his eyes. Tears streamed down her face as she screamed in frustration, throwing a vase across the room. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. But Tunde was already leaving. He stopped mid-step, turned to her and said, "I don't know what you did to me, but I expect you to be gone before I get back." He grabbed his keys and stormed out of the house, leaving Mina standing there in shock. Meanwhile, Tunde sat in his car outside Mama Kemi's house, his head in his hands. The memories of everything he had done came flooding in all at once. He suddenly remembered vividly every harsh word he had spoken to Kemi, how he had abandoned her and kicked her out of their home, the part he had played in the loss of their babies, and every moment Mina had slithered into spaces she never belonged. He punched the steering wheel, a guttural sob ripping from his throat. "I destroyed my wife." He was ashamed to even go to the front door, but he mastered the courage. Tunde's heart raced as he knocked on Mama Kemi's door. He had to see his Kemi. If anyone knew where Kemi was, it would be her stepmother. Kemi stood frozen, staring at Tunde when she opened the door. Slowly, she said, "Come in." Kemi closed her eyes as they sat on the couch facing each other. A storm of emotion swelled inside her. "I know you were under a spell, but it still hurts." "You left me," she said softly, the pain bleeding through every word. "You left me when I needed you the most." "I know," Tunde whispered, his voice breaking, "and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you'll let me." Kemi told Tunde about the ring, Balani, and how the curse had been broken. Tunde stared at her in horror. A part of her, the wounded, betrayed part, wanted to slam the door shut forever on them. But another part, the part that remembered the laughter, the love they once shared before everything was stolen, wondered if, maybe, they could be salvaged. Kemi wiped her tears roughly. "I need time," she whispered. Tunde nodded weakly, tears slipping down his cheeks. "Take all the time you need, my Kemi." Meanwhile, across town, Mina was back in her old apartment. She fell to her knees, screaming curses into the empty air, furious that her dreams of wealth and marriage had crumbled to dust. Seeking revenge, she leaked pictures and videos of she and Tunde in compromising poses. The news about Tunde and Mina spread like wildfire on social media. It, however, didn't get the reaction she thought she was going to get. The backlash was brutal. Brands pulled out of deals with Mina. Mina's once glamorous social media pages were flooded with hateful comments. Invitations to elite events stopped coming. What she had built on the ruins of Kemi's heart began to crumble under public scrutiny. Months passed. Kemi, despite everything, still loved Tunde. Even though she knew that Tunde had been under a spell, forgiveness did not come easily. The betrayal had left scars too deep to simply forget. It took time for them to patch the broken pieces of their relationship. There were days filled with awkward silences, but they didn't give up. Piece by piece, they rebuilt what had been shattered, and somehow their bond grew stronger. Not perfect, but stronger. Together, they found comfort in the Lord. The pain hadn't disappeared, but through prayer and faith, they had found strength again. They began to take their Christian walk seriously, attending Bible study, praying together every morning and evening, and anchoring their hearts in the Word. Exactly 1 year later, they stood at the altar of their church, holding two beautiful, healthy babies in their arms. Twin miracles. It was their baby dedication service. The choir sang with joy. The church was filled with praise and celebration. Friends, family, and well-wishers stood in awe at what the Lord had done. Mama Kemi sat in the front row, dressed in her finest wrapper and gel, her face glowing with pride. As she looked at Kemi and Tunde standing side by side, her eyes welled up with tears. She slowly raised a trembling hand toward the heavens and whispered through her tears, "Thank you, Lord, for how far you have brought my children." It was a full circle moment, beauty from ashes, joy from mourning. And though the wounds of the past had left scars, they now served as a reminder of God's mercy, healing, and faithfulness. Moral of the story is that it all began with a ring, a symbol meant to represent love, but one that was secretly cursed to destroy it. This teaches us that not everything glittering is pure. Behind smiles and glamour, evil and envy can be hidden, and behind flattery can dwell manipulation. Kemi's journey reminds us that discernment is a gift we must never ignore, especially when warnings come from those who love us. In the face of betrayal, heartbreak, and deep spiritual battles, it was faith, prayer, and resilience that led to Kemi and Tunde's healing and restoration. And in the end, what God has destined for you will always find its way back. No curse, no betrayal, no delay can stand in its path. Hi fam, click the link on the right to dive into yet another captivating tale. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Until next time, it's bye from us at Apenthene African Stories.